students,
Okay.
unlike like the national LAMSA, which is all the medical students.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's mainly meant to help undergraduate students gain experience, or we have volunteering opportunities, or even hearing physicians talk,
Okay.
and hopefully inspire. And
Absolutely. So are you guys all pre-med?
yes, I believe so.
Yeah? Awesome. Okay, cool. All right, very cool. Are you guys all Latino?
Yes.
Latina? Yeah, okay.
Small but mighty
This is
here.
so hard to see through the mask. Alrighty. All right, well, my name is Liz Cruz, and this is my wife, Tina. And I'm a gastroenterologist, and so let's see, where should I start? I will try to give you nutshells and I'll drag it on because I know you guys have midterms and everything. But when I've asked my mom, what I wanted to be when I was little. She goes, you wanted to be either a doctor or a pilot. And so I think that, I think in my mind, all I remember is that I always wanted to be a doctor. And I think part of that inspiration came from, we went to church every weekend, and I grew up Seventh-day Adventist, and so we were in church every Saturday, and we would have our version of Sunday school class, and they would always talk about stories about the missionaries who would go overseas and, who would help people, the doctors, and those stories really impressed me, and I just felt like one of these days I want to go overseas, and I want to do something, maybe be a doctor or whatever. I just wanted to help in that way. And so for as long as I can remember, I always wanted to be a physician. School at first was tough because I didn't know one word of English. My parents only taught us Spanish, and so for the first few years, I was learning. And I remember kids teasing when I'd be like in second grade. I can specifically remember, saying, the little boy is going to the store, and just teasing constantly. And, but, I kept going, and I guess I learned it. I finally learned English. And, I would say my journey to becoming a physician was a great journey. I had fun. I knew what I wanted to do from the time, I was very young. So that was my goal. That was my goal that I was working toward. Hello. That was the goal I was working towards.
Just say the story about the pencils.
The pencils, yes. My sisters always teased me because when I was probably like in 5th or 6th grade, I had pencils made that said Liz Cruz, MD, and so I was very very intentional. Like I was getting ready. I'm surprised I didn't get script pads made, but I was like very, very determined. And so my parents my mom was a secretary, now they call them administrative assistant, but she was a secretary. My dad was a carpenter, so they, they were blue-collared workers, but they worked very hard, and they put us all, I have 2 sisters, they put us all through private school. Like that's what they wanted. They wanted to put us through Christian private school. So I went to Christian private school all the way through med school. For medical school, I went to Loma Linda University, which is a Seventh-day Adventist university. You guys familiar with it? Southern California. So I, just worked very hard. It didn't come easy. I had to work hard. I'm truly a student in the sense that I had to study and work hard for it. It didn't just come easy for me, and so I worked, and I was, my mom recalls me setting an alarm at 4 a.m. when I was in 8th and 9th grade to get up to study, and I would very conveniently not do my chores. Like if it was a week for me to do dishes, I wouldn't do it, and then she'd come waking me up, making sure I was up and saying, levántate, you need to go do the dishes. I'm like, Mom, I need to study. Mija, you need to go do the dishes. You didn't do the dishes. I said, Mom, don't you want me to be a doctor? And she's like, yeah, get up and do the dishes. So we still had our chores. There was no there was no slacking on that. My mom made sure of that. Went on to med school. For medical school, my mother really encouraged me to look into doing military scholarship. And so even though I kind of fought it a little bit, I ended up doing a Navy scholarship. And so the Navy paid for all of my medical school, and then at the end of medical school, when I finished, I went to one of the naval hospitals in California, and I did my internship, and then I did internal medicine, and then I was sent overseas to Guam, and I served there as an internist for 4 years, and those were 4 of the best years of my life. It was just such a great experience meeting people from different places, of the United States who were all there. And when you're in the military, are any of you familiar with military? Any of you have parents that were military? What's that? Oh, hey! Oh my goodness, I didn't realize. Hi, Jasmine.
If that's in the Air Force, they're stationed in Germany.
Are they? Okay, very cool. So with military, you become a very tight community wherever you are, because if you're away from home, and especially those of us that were overseas, you just become really tight. So great friends, great opportunity for traveling, and great experience working as an internist at the Naval Hospital there on Guam, because there were 5 of us and we were it. So if we got a patient who had heart disease, who came in and had a heart attack, but now they need to go on to get more intervention, like maybe they need a cardiologist to, they need a bypass or whatever, then we had to medically evacuate those patients and take them to Hawaii. What a sacrifice, huh? It was like, anytime they'd ask for volunteers, all of us were fighting over it, because we got to fly over with the patient, and then we would get to stay there in Honolulu for a few days. So it was just an amazing experience, and I talk about it all the time. And it was, and they paid for my medical school. So the pluses were I got everything paid for, and I still took out a few personal loans for personal stuff, but for the most, they paid for all my education, all the books, even my stethoscope, all the medical instruments. And so I did that, and then while I was there in Guam, it was 4 years, I decided that I went through a divorce, and then I decided, well, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna do gastroenterology. And so I finished my time. I owed them 4 years, and went back to California. I went to San Francisco. I was at UCSF, and I did my gastroenterology fellowship there. And so that was 3 years, and then I stayed on staff for a year, and worked. And then while I was in San Francisco, I met Tina, and Tina was there. So Tina graduated from ASU with her marketing degree, and then she went during .com and started her own company. And then we ended up meeting there in church, and then it was time for her to come back, and so came back to Arizona. I've been here 17, 18 years, and I've worked initially at a multi-specialty practice, and but the call, being on call, was really very crushing, and I would leave like at 4 a.m, get home at midnight, and this would go on for like a week. By the end of the week, I'd be popping Motrin and Advil just because I had body aches, and Tina and I were like, you can't keep this up. This is way too much. So decided to start our own practice, and so we started our own practice in 2007, and we've maintained the practice. We've kept it open despite the fact that so many medical practices are being bought out by hospitals and big super groups. And so we've been able to keep the practice open. I do mainly outpatient. I stopped doing inpatient many years ago when we started having children, and I wanted to make sure that I was, that I was home so that my kids would know who I was. You know, I had a lot of older doctor friends that told me, hey kiddo, don't sacrifice your family for medicine, because my kids are grown up and I don't even know who they are, you know. And so I wanted to make sure that didn't happen. So it's an outpatient practice. I do bread and butter gastroenterology. I see patients with acid reflux, rectal bleeding, irritable bowel, people, you know, now that the recommendation is for doing colonoscopy at age 45, you know, now, I mean, we already had a lot of people coming in for their screening colonoscopies. Now, you know, there's a lot more coming in because the age has been lowered. And I just spend, so I'll tell you about my days. So first of all, I have 2 nurse practitioners, okay, who are there in the office seeing patients, okay? So when I first started the practice, it was just me. And then I ended up hiring a nurse practitioner, but you know, I was seeing patients half the time, and then I'd be at the surgical center at the hospital doing procedures, colonoscopies, upper endoscopies, and then as the years have moved on, my practice has transitioned over to a model where I have 2 nurse practitioners in the office that are seeing patients, and then I'm doing procedures every day. I'm scoping every day. So they see the patients, they evaluate them, they order, you know, whatever tests they need, CAT scans, ultrasound, blood work, and then they schedule them for procedures, and then that's when I get to see the patient. I do procedures, like today I did 18 cases, and you know, and it's, for me, it's just so rewarding. It's so rewarding to have this patient who comes in, who has these symptoms, and the biggest thing that I hear over and over is, do I have cancer? Do I have cancer? And so for me, it's just rewarding to be able to come out, do the procedures, and then come out and tell the patient, hey, everything was good. I mean, maybe they have a little inflammation in the stomach and a few polyps in the colon, but overall everything was great. And that's all they want to hear. That's all they want to hear. And so to me, that, you know, seeing that smile on their face when they're like, oh, thank God, I thought, you know, I had something bad. And you know, they don't know, and so it can be scary. So that's definitely very rewarding, is that smile. Why did I pick gastroenterology? So as I told you, I did internal medicine, and I worked as an internist at the Naval Hospital in Guam for those 4 years, and I loved it. It was a great experience. But when I was doing my residency, so when you're doing your residency in internal medicine, you get to rotate in the different subspecialties. And my 2 favorite specialties were cardiology and gastroenterology. And anytime I was on call, if there were any cases in the emergency room that had to do with, you know, chest pain or rectal bleeding, abdominal pain, those are the patients that I wanted to see. I mean, and I think that part of it was just that those specialties are procedural oriented specialties. So you can do procedures, and I liked having that option of, you know, working with my hands and doing procedures, and also being able to see them in the office, you know, and so having that combination. And
not having to use a needle and thread.
Yes, not having to use a needle and thread. So she says that because when I was in Loma Linda, when we were doing our rotations, our clinicals in our last 2 years, I did an OBGYN rotation, and one night, you know, I mean, basically you never slept on that rotation. You would go lay down for 20 minutes, and then you're getting called, right? Because babies come at any time. But the girl had torn the lady had torn, and I'm sewing her up, and the next thing I know, I sewed my finger up with her. As I'm sewing her up, I see my finger like sewn in there. I'm like, okay, maybe I shouldn't do a surgical specialty. And I had to do like, all this testing, HIV testing every, 6 months or however, I don't even remember, it's so long ago. But yeah, that's when I realized probably doing a surgery specialty was not for me. I don't have to use suture and sew anyone up when I'm doing colonoscopies or endoscopies. Actually, we get to use cooler stuff, because when you're, like if somebody comes in with an ulcer into the hospital and they're bleeding, and you go in there and you see this big ulcer, if you see a blood vessel there that's bleeding, I mean, you can use certain, like epinephrine, inject it in there. You can use cautery. We have little tools we can stick in through the scope to cauterize it. We have clips, like little tiny clips that you can take to clamp the blood vessel. I mean, it's really a lot of fun. It's really a lot of fun. It's just, we have a lot of different things that we can do when we're doing procedures, and just to be able to take care of someone who's come in with a bleed like that, I mean, is very satisfying. I mean, I'm not doing call anymore, but believe me, I still have all the memories from all the many calls that I took, and people coming in with a bleed, a rectal bleed, or wherever they're bleeding from. And so it's definitely very rewarding. So I ended up choosing gastroenterology because of cardiology and gastroenterology. I actually did enjoy my gastroenterology rotation probably a little bit more, and truly, it has been a very rewarding specialty, very rewarding specialty. As far as practicing and having just an outpatient practice, we've been able to do that. And nowadays the hospitals are hiring, they hire hospitalists, they hire gastroenterologists, cardiologists that are mainly focused there. I mean, there are still groups that take call there, but it's just changed a lot, even through the years that I've been practicing medicine. And so very rewarding. One of the things that we did in our practice, okay, so probably we have twins. They're 12, they're gonna be 13. So right before before she got pregnant with the twins, so probably about 12, 13 years ago, I came to Tina and I said, I don't know what to do. I really don't know what to do. I'm seeing all these patients, I'm doing tests, I'm making sure there's nothing bad, no cancer, nothing like that, but they're still coming back having symptoms, and I put them on all sorts of medicines for their acid reflux. I put them on, this for their IBS, irritable bowel, and they're still coming back not feeling well. And I was like, I don't know what to do. She's like, what are you looking at me for? I'm a marketing, she's like, I'm a marketing and office manager. Why are you asking me? You need to figure it out. Well, that was when Tina and I started our journey, because we both set out to try to figure out, what else could we do for our patients? Because I have never ever said, hey, listen, I've worked you up, I can't figure out what's going on, there's nothing else I can do for you. I've never said that to any of my patients, and I will never say it, because I'm the kind who doesn't give up, okay? And even though I did every test on them, I still wanted to try to figure out how I can help them to make their quality of life better, okay? So we started going to all sorts of seminars. We read probably over 200 books, like over the course of a year, on nutrition, wellness, you name it. We read books about the pharmaceutical industry. We read books about just any topic that we could read on, and we decided to start a wellness program for our patients. And along with the wellness program, so it would be where we could counsel them on nutrition. So she went back to school and got her certification in holistic nutrition, And we put together an online program that has several modules that goes through all sorts of different topics, you know, food, water, exercise, like all sorts of things, stress. And then we started holding seminars in our office. And we had, like, sometimes, you know, my waiting room was, the office I was in at that time, the waiting room was I don't know, maybe this length, half of this room. And we would get like 50 people in there. Okay, we would get, like, patients were craving, they wanted to know, and they wanted to know what they could do, they want to feel good, they want to have a better quality of life. And so we started doing this, and then we decided, hey, let's get some products. We found a company that makes you know, digestive enzymes, probiotics, detox, greens, and things like that. And so we're like, why don't we start carrying this in the office? You know, it's a more holistic, natural approach, and we'll combine it with what we're doing. And so sure enough, we started carrying like 12 different products, and it was amazing. Like, people were so excited. You know, we were starting them on digestive enzymes and just that simple thing, and probiotics. Those are our two top sellers, probiotics and digestive enzymes. Now, they still get worked up, the standard gastroenterology workup, because I have to stick to a standard of care, okay? Because if not, I risk losing my license. So I still stick to the standard of care. We still work them up, do a full workup, but once we did everything and we realized, okay, good, there's nothing bad, there's no cancer, maybe they still have some reflux, then at that point, then we would bring in the more holistic approach. And patients just started feeling better. Patients started referring their family and friends to us, even though they weren't our patients. A lot of them were being referred just for the holistic side of our practice. And it just has grown. Now, what's happened over the years is we ended up peeling off a lot of the supplements, because we realized what was working the best. Probiotics, digestive enzymes, greens, which is basically greens that are pulverized into powder and put into capsules, because people don't eat greens. And then a detox, a very gentle detox that works systemically, that people can just take, and that just helps to detox their body. And the other thing that has been a big thing is salts, electrolyte salts. So you know Gatorade, Powerade has electrolyte salts in it, but it also has sugar and chemicals, dyes, all that stuff. So we formulated salts that our patients could just put into their water so that they could get the salts, the electrolytes that they need. And so those 5 became our core 5 that our patients have been taking for years and years. And it has, that side of our business is amazing, because that side, when patients come in our office, we have all sorts of posters all over our office where patients can see for themselves the holistic side of what we do. We never push anything on anyone. They always ask, hey, what about those probiotics? What about those digestive enzymes? I saw the picture outside, and tell me about it. So we've been able to grow that whole business, and we ship now all over the country, even to Australia, and I don't know if we're shipping to Europe at this point, but we've been able to help so many patients, and we've got patients that have been, not only our patients with the practice, but as far as our wellness program, that have been on some of these probiotics and digestive enzymes for
Over a decade.
So what happens is that we also get referrals from other gastroenterologists for because they hear about us, and there's no other gastroenterologist that is doing this, at least not here in the valley. And so we get referrals from other gastroenterologists that send their patients, not for me to do procedures, because they've already had that done with their gastroenterologist, but so that they can get hooked into the wellness part of it. And so it's been really a great adjunct to have with our practice. Let me see, so.
And your books. Talk about
Oh
the
yeah,
books.
we also have books. Tina and I wrote a book, Digest This, and then our 16-year-old son, when he was 11, decided that he wanted to take our book and he wanted to write the book, but do it in a kid-friendly version. So it took about a year for him to do it, but he finally did it, and actually that kid's book, the Digest This, is more popular than our book. It's really taken off, and we also have a cookbook, and we do a podcast. We've been podcasting for a few years. We have several hundred podcasts in our library. We try to put one out every week. We have had spells where maybe for a little while we didn't put a podcast out just for different reasons, but we've got a few hundred that are sitting out there, and we continue to podcast. So that's the podcasts are free. I mean, that's our patient. We just let our patients know, and they can go in there and find all sorts of different gastroenterology topics, and so it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, it's been fun. I think there was something else I was going to say. Did I capture everything?
Anything specific to being Latin?
To be
in
Latin.
medicine?
I was trying to think about that question as far as being Latin. I mean, I feel that we have a lot of opportunities out there. I was trying to think so when I applied for my gastroenterology fellowship, couple things that helped me. So UCSF is a big research place, okay? And I didn't have any research behind me, but when I interviewed there, the guy who was interviewing said, he goes, I gotta tell you, two big things you have going for you are, number one, that you're Latin, and number two, that you've been in the military, that you were in the Navy. He goes, as soon as we saw the Navy thing, even though you don't have research experience, we were right away, drawn to that. And so that was a big thing. So in that situation, it helped. I never felt that it worked against me being Latin. If anything, I felt that it has helped. I mean, the only time when I felt maybe, when I was 6th or 7th grade, and I was still probably maybe a little rusty on my English, and I was begging the teacher, put me in this higher level spelling, I can do it. And I just remember feeling like, what is it, because I'm Spanish? You don't think I could do it? But that's really the only time. I've never really thought that way. That has never been my thought process, because my parents were really, really great about, to them, we had so many opportunities here that's the way they always spoke. They're like, you guys have great opportunities. You can be whatever you want. Whatever you want, you can do. Don't ever, the only thing that limits you is you. My mom was really big on that. The only thing that's gonna limit you is you, because you can do anything. There's all sorts of opportunities here. So that's really the mentality that I grew up with, and that there were so many opportunities, and I felt like I always had a lot of great help along the way. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, you can be a great doctor. You could become a cardiothoracic surgeon, and you could become famous. You could do some sort scientific thing that just makes you famous, you know, but at the end of the day, the real thing is having relationships, right? And I remember always thinking, oh, I'm gonna be a doctor and I'm just gonna work so hard and that's gonna be my whole life. Well, it's not my whole life, you know, it's not my whole life. It's, you know, I have my wife, we have 4 kids. We have a 25-year-old who was actually from my previous marriage, but you know, she raised him from the time he was 4 or 5 years old. You know, we have a 16-year-old, we have twins that are gonna be 13. And you know, those relationships and having those relationships with your spouse, with your partner, with your children, you know, with, you know, being able to have a life and you know, go out for coffee with a friend and worship, you know, I mean, you know, those are the things that bring meaning to life, you know, I mean, the fact that you're a great doctor is awesome, and you can use those skills to make an impact on the world for the purpose that you were made for, okay, but that's not the source of happiness. It's not the source of happiness. There's more to it. And so just, you know, try not to, as you move on through your education, because it is a long road, but hey, you're gonna spend time doing something, so you might as well, you know, go to med school, you know, and, you know, try not to lose sight of that, and it's a journey that you're on, and enjoy the journey, and, you know, if there's a family gathering going on, try not to miss it if you can be there, because I can tell you, I miss many family gatherings, many family reunions, because I was busy being a doctor, and it's not, I mean, it was great and I was helping people, but my priorities were a little bit off, and I realized that, and so I just want to encourage you to try to always keep that in mind, because that's what will be fulfilling, and that's what will really give you true happiness. Go.
Well, talk a little bit about why you decided to put your practice where it is today in the valley.
Oh, you mean geographically?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when we opened up the practice, so I left the practice I was in. I had to leave that area. It was in northern Peoria. And I had to leave that area for a year because of a non-compete that I had. So I had to be, 10 miles away. Mm-hmm. So in the meantime, what I did was I joined this other guy with the thought that after a year, then I would go back into northern Peoria and open up a practice there. But when I joined him, what I realized is that the demographic of patients that we were seeing there in that specific area was very heavy as far as the Latinos. Okay, like I think 50% of my patients were Latinos, Latinas, and there was a wide variety in the age too. I'm an adult gastroenterologist, so I don't see pediatrics, but we were seeing patients from 19 to 99. Whereas when I was in northern Peoria, I rarely ever saw a Latino in my practice, and they were basically all the viejitos, which is fine. I mean, the viejitos need to be taken care of too. But when that year that I was in that practice, I just like fell in love with the patients. And so when she's like, okay, well, are you ready? Let's head up north, let's go and open up a practice. I was like, I really want to stay here in this area. And so we're like, okay, well, let's find a place. And we decided to stay there because we were seeing all these Latinos, and I just felt, I felt like I was giving back to my people. I felt like, okay, I didn't go overseas to be a missionary or anything like that, but this is my missionary field right here. And so we ended up staying there. We found an office and that's where we've been all this time. And we still continue to have predominantly a lot of Latinos in the practice.
About
So
40% of our patients are Spanish speaking.
yeah, so it's really great. One of my nurse practitioners does not speak Spanish, and she's the one that's been with me for 9, almost 10 years, and so for a long time we were trying to find a bilingual nurse practitioner, and we finally found someone.
It's very hard to come by.
Yes, yes.
Bilingual in peace.
Yes, so we now have a bilingual nurse practitioner, and the patients are, especially, my Spanish-speaking patients are just in heaven, so.
I will say I have never had to market her. Being a female GI, there's not very many of them, especially the fact that she's Spanish-speaking, right? There's not very many of them. And then we actually are, because we're gay, she gets a lot of those patients as well, right? So it's a woman-owned, Latina-owned, veteran-owned, LBG, community-owned business. So she gets, the referrals coming into our office are like insane, which is awesome, right?
Yeah, God has been good to us. God has been very good to us, again, because this is a time, we're in a time in medicine where a solo practitioner is rare to find. There's still a few out there, there's still some, but it's just become harder to survive alone because of reimbursements from the insurance companies are going down, but your overhead, for maintaining an office, that doesn't go overhead. That doesn't go down. You still have to pay rent, or you still have to pay electricity, it's amazing all the stuff that go into it. And anyways, fortunately I don't have to think about that because she does. but yeah, it's and so I'm always so grateful to God, because I feel that He wants us there, and He wants our office open. Because just in this last year, 2 of my other partners, not partners, but colleagues, gastroenterology colleagues, closed up their office. And so I just feel like we're supposed to be there. That's where God wants us, and He's been very good and has blessed us, and we continue to see a lot of patients. So hopefully we're making an impact and helping people.
Well, and we didn't stop during COVID.
Oh yeah, we continue during COVID.
A lot of the practices, GI offices, stopped during COVID, and we stayed open. We just did everything remote. We moved everything to telemed. Nurse practitioner saw everyone in telemed. We only had to stop scoping for maybe 2 or 3 weeks when the surgery centers closed down, but after that it was emergent cases, which most of what we do is emergent, unless it's a screening colonoscopy. So there was only 3 weeks where she wasn't scoping, and she was the only GI on our side of town that stayed open and that scoped. So we didn't really have to recover from COVID either. A lot of the GI offices that reopened are still trying to recover from COVID. So that was a blessing too, that we couldn't afford to shut down because we're a private practice, right? So we had to go for the PPP loan, and we tried to stay open as long as we could, and only had to furlough our staff for 2 weeks till we got that loan, and then we were able to bring everybody back. And the cool thing about our staff, because they've been with us for so long, even though they were furloughed, they were still coming in and listening to messages. They were still working, on the side, because they didn't want to come back to 150,000 messages. So it was nice that even though they weren't getting paid, they were still pitching in to get things done, knowing that, we were only going to be closed down for a couple weeks. So yeah, it was a blessing during that time. That was a tough time. So
does anybody have any questions?
I have a lot of questions. If anyone wants to go first, please go ahead.
I have one.
Yeah.
So, you said you do a lot, which is super amazing. What's your opinion on a lot of doctors in practice of medicine that tend to face a lot of burnout?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you prevent that, or if you have been through that, and how do you recover?
It's a great question. So I think that had I continued doing call, that I would have definitely, maybe by now, maybe I wouldn't even be in medicine. As much as I love gastroenterology, I was pretty close to burnout. The call was horrendous. I know that a lot of the burnout also happens a lot like with ER doctors. You know, that specialty tends to be on the top as far as burnout. I think that for us, you know, for me, as far as trying not to burn out is one thing that I do that has helped a lot is I break up my week. Okay, so I'm scoping Monday and Tuesday, and then tomorrow is my admin day. So I was gonna say I'm off, but I'm really not off. I'm reviewing pathology reports. I'm reviewing, you know, labs and, you know, doing paperwork. But it's a break. It's a break from the scoping because the scoping is very physical. You know, I'm standing on my feet all day long. I'm walking from, you know, the preoperative area to the surgical area where we do the procedures, then to the recovery room. Like my anesthesiologist, so I have an anesthesiologist that I work with. He's my guy. And he's always with me. And he's always like, Liz, are you okay? Are you hanging in there? Because, you know, it's like a lot of running around. So it's very physical what I do as far as, you know, a lot of running around and then I'm on my feet scoping. But I love what I do. But I do need the break. I do need the break. And okay, so I'm going to tell you a little story. Because I think this really was a wake-up call for me. So about 3 years ago, I was having some pain. You know, I was like, you know, I'm gonna get a CAT scan. I'm gonna get a CT scan. I have my buddy, I'm gonna have him do a CT scan on me. So I had him do a CT scan, and you know, I'm thinking, oh, it's gonna be fine, but I'm just gonna do it just to be on the safe side. Well, it wasn't fine. The CT scan came back with enlarged lymph nodes all throughout. And my friend called me and he was like, this is not good. You know, the first thing I'm thinking is lymphoma, you know, some sort of cancer, and that's what he was thinking too. He said, this is not good, and I'm like, are you sure that is my CT scan and you didn't confuse it with someone else? I mean, other than some discomfort, I wasn't having fevers, no weight loss, I had a great appetite, I otherwise felt great. So within 2 days, I was being put through a PET scanner. I got a PET scan. The PET scan, and I was a mess. I was an emotional mess. And the PET scan basically showed the enlarged lymph nodes, but nothing else. There was no tumor anywhere else. And so, you know, we couldn't figure out. And I saw my friend who's an oncologist, who I refer to all the time. I saw her, she's like, look, we could do a biopsy of one of the lymph nodes, or we can just watch. And she goes, it might be tough getting a biopsy. Even though they're enlarged, they're still, you know, it might be tough. I was like, you know what? Let's wait. And so I decided at that point, and at this point, I was probably only sleeping 4-5 hours a night because I was working all day long, every single day. Sometimes even on Saturday, I would book cases, not in the hospital, but I would book cases at the surgical center, and I was working. Then I'd come home, you know, eat dinner, kiss the kids, you know, good night, and then stay up, work another 2 hours, you know, signing off reports, wake up at 4 o'clock. So I was like not taking care of myself. And I just, you know, that was like a pivot point in my life where I had to sit down and really do some soul searching, and I was like, you know what? I don't know what this is. I mean, I'm still not out of the woods, and I don't know if this eventually will turn into something, or is this just something inflammatory, but I need to do something. So, I mean, we were already eating what I felt was healthy, but I'm gonna tell you something. The doctor's lounge is the most unhealthy place to eat.
She was eating healthy at home. let's
Yeah,
say
I
that.
was eating healthy at home, but the doctor's lounge, all these snacks and Rice Krispie treats and I mean, you name it. There might be a little banana and an apple somewhere, but truly not the healthiest foods in the doctor's lounges, at least the ones that I hang out in. So I really got strict with my diet, and mind you, we were eating pretty healthy, and I even make green juice every day. Been doing that for years. So for me to get that report, like I was like, what's going on? So I changed my diet, got stricter with myself, bringing salads to the surgical center and just being careful, not eating the snacks. And I started doing yoga. I started doing other treatments, lymphatic massage. I started, we bought this lymphatic vibrator machine that we have at home. I started being more intentional. I even did some acupuncture for a while, and started drinking more water. Colonics, yeah.
You were doing it all.
I was doing it all, and the last CT scan that I had less and they were smaller. So my buddy, the radiologist, says, you know what, he goes, I see this stuff all the time. I think this is just something inflammatory. But it was a wake-up call. And that's when I changed my schedule also. So if you don't, you have to be intentional in taking care of yourself, because if not, you will drive yourself literally to the grave. Literally. So for me, I've inserted now this Wednesday, which is nice because I worked 2 days and, I had a full load today and yesterday too. But tomorrow will be a down day. I'll be doing paperwork, and then I'll go do yoga in the morning and just, we'll podcast and just have a relaxed day, maybe even go pick up the kids from school. I just had to become more intentional in how I was taking care of myself. When it starts getting heavy, I tell her, okay, so 18, 19 cases is a heavy day for me. Back when I was younger, no problem. Now I'm getting older. I'm in my 50s, and so I drag a little bit, just a little bit, because I am getting a little older. So I tell her, look, I don't want to get back to what I was doing before. We have to dial it in a little bit, So I think that as a physician, you're the only one that can take care of yourself. No one's going to do it as good as you can. Obviously, we don't take care of ourselves for a long time, right? We think that we're invincible and we could just keep going. So you just have to be intentional. You have to take care of yourself. Self-care is so important. So important. As you're going through pre-med, through medical school, whatever you're doing, do something for yourself, some exercise, yoga. It's so great. Something, and take care of yourself. And when you get into your specialty, whatever it may be, look, when you're going through residency, it's going to be crazy busy, but you guys are young, so you can handle it. But as you get into your career, you're going to have to decide what you want to do. And decide how you want, there's certain specialties that are crazy busy compared to others. And that's something to keep in mind too, your lifestyle, your quality of life as far as the specialty that you're picking. And I'm just gonna throw this in there. My anesthesiologist always teases me. He's like, you picked the wrong specialty. Because he does his paperwork, he's here, I always tell him, dude, man, you're sitting there on your laptop, he's watching the monitor, watching the patient, but he's on his laptop. I told him, you could totally do a business, have an online business that you're doing during the day while you're working with me, because he does his stuff. In between cases, he goes, talks to the patient, then he goes and eats snacks, and and then at the end of the day, he's done. He's like, you picked the wrong specialty. He goes, I'm done. You now have to review pathology. You have to send patients letters. I'm like, I mean, so every
And he gets
special-
paid more than she does per patient.
So I'm not telling you, oh, pick a specialty because you'll do, but you know what? I just didn't know enough. I mean, would I have picked differently? I don't know, because I really do like GI, but I think had I been thinking more about the future and about family life, quality of life, but I really wasn't thinking that way. That's why I'm telling you guys, think that way. Think about your future life because at some point, there's gonna be a day when you're gonna be my age, where you're gonna be, you know, in your 50s and you know, just wanna make sure that you have a fulfilling life and that you're still alive and that you're not sick, okay? Because being a physician could be very, very, you know, tough, depending on what specialty you're practicing.
One of my favorite questions to ask physicians, just because you said, while medicine is an aspect of your life, it doesn't consume your life and it doesn't make all of it. But if you weren't a doctor, say if you decided to pursue something else, what would that be?
She'd work at Starbucks.
Seriously, I would own a coffee shop. I mean, you know, my mom always said that. I always talked about being a pilot, and I've always been fascinated with it. I know when I was in high school, I started a pilot class, but it was too intense, and I needed to concentrate on my physics and anatomy,
Right.
you know, so that I could get into med school. But I've always been fascinated by you know, by that. Being a pilot is probably something I would have considered. But yeah, I always tell her, I'm like, why don't we buy a coffee shop or something? Like, love coffee, and you know, just that atmosphere. I think it's that atmosphere of that environment, you know, people are coming in to have conversation and to bond and, you know, over a cup of coffee. So, no, maybe.
Chris would know, he currently works at
Yeah, I work at a coffee shop.
You do?
Yeah.
Where do you work?
It's called Brick Road Coffee.
Okay.
It's nearby here. It's actually LGBT owned and operated.
Oh,
so-
really?
Yeah.
Very
brand
cool.
new. Yeah.
Is it a franchise or is
No,
it just its own?
Its own. Yeah, opened in October.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
So how do you like working there?
I love it. Yeah, best job before I start med school in July. So
Okay,
yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, so where are you guys all ready to go into med school, or you're all in different?
We're all in different.
Different? Okay, okay. Alrighty.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Also, thank you for this amazing presentation. But yeah, touching back on your holistic approach to medicine, like, what's your opinion or your thoughts on like providing like this wellness program like for other practices?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, let me tell, what's your name?
Julian.
Julian?
Julian.
Julian, let me tell you something. So, was it last year? We have tried so many different ways to get it into other practices. The primary care docs love it. And we actually had a couple dinners when it started really picking up
Well,
momentum.
you have to tell them at first when you started doing it, how you didn't want to share.
Okay. So, I gotta.
Yeah, go back up just a little
I'll
bit.
back up a little bit. When we first started it, I had a hard time at first, a really hard time buying into it, because I was a trained medical doctor, medicine, prescription, okay? And, you know, I want to see the literature on it, that's just the way you're trained when you're going through medical school, and then your clinicals, you know, everything has to be scientific, and, you know, you gotta see the paper.
Double-blind study.
Double blind, blah, blah, blah. So it was it was a mentality that I had that was kind of drilled into me through all of my training, all of my medical training. And so at first, it took me a while to wrap my mind around it and be able to accept it. So I talked about at the beginning, like, oh, we just flowed right into it and blah, blah, blah. There was definitely
Lots of tears.
a lot of process as far as our mental. It was when I started seeing patients coming back feeling so great, who had started like probiotics, the enzymes, when I was like, oh my goodness. Like they were like, oh my goodness, this has changed my life. I've never felt so great. I don't have the gas, the bloating, my reflux is so much better. I'm feeling so great. That's when I really started realizing and opening up my mind to be more open-minded to the whole thing, okay?
But still didn't want to tell people.
Yeah,
Outside.
so I was afraid of letting the referring doctors know, because I thought, number one, they would think I was a quack, and number two, that they wouldn't send us referrals, okay? And so, it took me a while to get to that point where patients are feeling great, they're doing great. Plus, I'm still performing my same gastroenterology workup on them according to standard of care. I'm not deviating from any of that. But it did take a while. So finally, I got to the point where I was like, oh my goodness, this stuff is awesome. Our patients are loving it. They're feeling better. This is the answer. Remember when I first came to Tina, I was like, what do I do? And she didn't know. She's like, I don't know. Anyways, so fast forward. Now I'm like all on board. And so we decide, let's have a couple dinners for the referring doctors. So we rented got a room at a hotel. We brought in dinner, and we brought in all these referring doctors that refer to us so that we could talk to them about our program. They loved it. Every single one of them loved it. And a lot of them already knew because the patients had already gone back and told them. But they were like on board. Some of them wanted to know, how do I get this in my office? Because, if patients ask us for it, we can just give it to them, sell it here. So we about a year ago or 2 years ago, and it's not the first time we've tried. We've tried different ways of getting it into the different offices. The problem is the physicians, the providers are very receptive and very like, yeah, let's do it. But they're so busy that when it comes down to it, we're like, okay, let's meet for coffee and let's talk. And we ended up meeting with a few doctors, and they were all like excited about it. One of them bought the products to have them in her office. But the majority of the doctors, even though they were excited about it, they're like, we're so busy. We're so busy. The primary cares are seeing 30, 40 patients a day. They're just, and so it's really, really it's been really hard for us to really get in there. And it's not that they're not interested in it. They love it, and they're fine that their patients are taking these things, but they're just busy, and it's hard.
When our son published his book, he took our book and made it for kids. I went out to the pediatrician offices in the Valley. I probably hit like 40 pediatric offices between Peoria and Avondale area and Phoenix. And I got the same answer from all of them, that they all love the concept. They think it's great that we're trying to educate people, but there's no way that they have time in the office because they're seeing so many patients. But that they're frustrated because of the obesity epidemic that's happening now, and they just think that parents aren't going to care. There's like, we'll sit here with a child who's obviously obese. They have 2 obese parents, and we're trying to tell them this child is obese, and they're going to start having medical issues very early, and the parents are like, oh, they're fine. Like everybody's in denial, over what's happening, and they're like, yeah, it's a great concept, but we don't think anybody's really going to be receptive. And it's sad, right? I mean, it is what it is. It's where we are today, but it's the reality. Just with reimbursements declining, I mean, this is the reality of medicine today. Reimbursements continue to go down, right? Insurance, for us to have insurance, medical insurance, continues to go up, right? Every year, we have our staff. We have to provide medical insurance for our staff. Our price for insurance goes up every year, but the amount she makes for a colonoscopy goes down every year. And so for a pediatrician or for a PCP who's seeing patients in their office, they're making very little on those office visits. So in order to keep a practice open, you gotta be seeing 40 patients a day, you know, to keep those offices open, unless you sell out to a Dignity or a Banner, you know, or a hospital system or a big group, which a lot of these doctors are selling out today. That's why, you know, Dr. Cruz was saying, there's not a lot of solo practitioners today where you're running your own show. You're working for somebody typically today, you know, if you're gonna be a doctor. So it's just the medicine, the field of medicine has changed a lot over the last decade that we've had the practice.
Oh, we've tried.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
That's great. So I know we're a little bit over time, but thank you guys for coming. If you could give a round of applause.
Thank you guys for having me, I really
Of course.
appreciate
Thank you
it.
for coming out.
Yeah, and good luck on your test. Yeah, good luck, yeah.
Look forward to spring break.
Oh, yeah.